Yeah. Okay, it says that I am live streaming on YouTube. It's going to take a little bit, but the jingle's going to come up here, folks. There we go. Well, good evening, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I'm pleased to be your host here again tonight on the Sedona Connection. It's the evening of July 11th as I'm coming to you. It's 6 p.m. on the West Coast. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast in the United States, and then wherever you may be all around the world for the rest of you that are listening in. But this is the live program tonight, and you can see, yes, I'm in another hotel room here tonight. I'm making a wonderful trip to another I'm basically going over to the Los Angeles area tomorrow to be able to do some business there, and I'm on my way there. I was in Phoenix today, and I stopped along the way in between, and so we're here tonight. We're here live for this program here on July 11th. And Blanca, how are you doing on this fine evening?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine, and I hope that we're hearing, everybody can hear us not only here on Blog Talk Radio, but also on YouTube. I hope they can hear us there as well. So I know the live streaming is going on YouTube. I got that window open up, and there's always a little bit of a delay that goes on there and between that one and what I've got going on, but it seems to be working just fine. What I would love to do is for any of you that are watching the live streaming, and if you have my phone number, send me a text. Let me know that everything looks good, sounds good, on YouTube live streaming. And then, I know, Blanca, you're there. You and I are coming across fine on Blog Talk, but it's always nice because sometimes we do everything right, but we don't always know what it sounds like on the other end. So, well, but how are you doing this evening? What have you got going on tonight?
Doing great, and we're just cooling off. Al and I were out in the field doing some surveys today, and boy, was it a scorcher. So we got home and just had a really cold iced tea and put our feet up, just try to recoup. And you told me it was pretty hot where you are, too.
Well, where I am here in California, it was very hot, but wow. In Sedona, for 4 days in a row, we have had thunderstorms, and we have just desperately needed the rain. We had, all the way going back to August of last year, we had only 4 individual days of rain. Now our monsoon season is hit, and we've had huge thunderstorms every day for 4 days in a row. In fact, it was so dry that they canceled all of the July 4th fireworks in all of northern Arizona because of fire danger, because things were so dry and so tender. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. It says that, somebody says, Blanca, that you're echoing. And it says I may need a headset.
I did hear it now.
Huh? Well, you're not echoing on my end. I don't hear you echoing. But somebody's saying that you are, and I don't know why. And it's again one of those things when we set it up, everything was working fine, but now all of a sudden there's an echo taking place, and I don't know why. Let me try this headset and see if anything changes. Okay, hold on.
Are you going to put the headset on?
Okay, I put my headset on, and but you're not echoing to me. Everything still sounds fine for me.
Let me see.
So,
Okay. I do hear a little bit of an echo still. Well, that's too bad.
I don't know where that echo would be coming from and why we would have it. I have absolutely no idea. So, let's see.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, it comes on and off. It's kind of crazy. But, like right now, I don't hear the echo. Right now, I don't hear it. So it's intermittent, it looks like. So hopefully it'll disappear for good.
Okay.
Anyway, you were speaking of 4th of July. Of course, we didn't do the show because you realized it was 4th of July, but I hope people got to see your July 3rd newsletter because you gave a very special shout-out.
To the wonderful people in Norway. Okay, I got a text now saying that we both sound good on Blog Talk, but a slight echo and Blanca not enough to bother. So, whatever.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's just,
good.
yeah.
So,
and folks, thank you for sending in the text messages to let us know how we're doing and where things are. So, yeah. But I think we're ready to move on. Okay?
No, we're not, because I wanted to emphasize that people need to watch your July 3rd newsletter because you really look cute.
Oh,
Your
thank you.
Viking outfit.
That's right. I was wearing that nice little Viking helmet, is what I was doing, and yes.
Yes, and you were giving a nice appreciation and shout out to the good people in Norway, and you had a little bit of a nice merry moment there. And hey, folks in Norway, it's true. He just came and he's so in love with you all. So thanks for treating Dave so good while he was over there.
Okay, it says that my microphone picks you up and then feeds it, but we've done this before. We've never had any problem with that. So hold on here just a second. Let me take a look at what else I got going on here. But
yeah.
I
Right
don't.
now, I don't hear it.
But it says it's not that.
It's
You know.
not enough.
Yeah. You know, I set up all the stuff to do it, and sometimes it does it. Sometimes I don't know why.
Right.
But I think one of these days down the road, we're going to invest in some much better equipment where we don't have this problem. You know, the issue is Blog Talk Radio because I want people to be able to call in. It would nice. What I need to do is find something where I can do the live streaming, and that people can also call in on the live streaming. And I think in just a single program. So I'm not doing both like a YouTube live streaming and a Blog Talk Radio, but we can do it all in one. And that's what I need to find. That's the bottom line. They're out there, but some of them are very expensive. Some of them are going to cost me $1,000 a month just to do 4 programs.
Wow.
And so I need to find some others that just aren't as expensive. So folks, if you know any of these live streaming programs that allows people to call in, that's the issue. That's what I'm looking for. So I can do live streaming. I can do that. You can, check that out. We can go through that, but then also people can call in as well. That's what I want to find. Okay? All right. Anything else?
I think that's it.
You think we're ready to move on with the program tonight then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's see. I did get a new text message, and let's just say what they're saying. It says we're fine on YouTube. Okay. All right. So let's do this then. Let's go ahead and move on. Well, folks, thank you very much. I did say I was going to give a kind of a brief update on what's happening in the whole currency transactions issues. Let's just say this. It was in the last 2 days I've talked with 2 very different sources, and one of them is absolutely a top qualified source. Here's the bottom line. The guy that I talked with, he has the ability to call into Trump's office in the White House. And there is a staff person that is there within Trump's office in the White House that is coordinating this stuff being able to move forward. Now, the elders who basically, the Dragon families who have been the primary sources of all these funds, they basically have always said they can't move this money without having the cooperation of basically the top world leaders. Because anybody like, in the United States at a top position or even in Russia or China, they could shut this thing down in a heartbeat. So it took the cooperation of these world leaders to be able to move this stuff forward. And what we are being told, again, my source of information who talks directly with this individual inside Trump's office, so saying all 3 of the world leaders are on board. That would be President Trump, President Putin of Russia, and President Xi of China. In fact, this person that my contact works with, and he talks with the person inside Trump's office, he is helping to coordinate this meeting going on next week with Trump and Putin. And there's just top speculation. I'm saying it's in a speculative source at this time, but that's one of the topics and discussions that they're going to have in that meeting together, and that things will be ready to start moving after that. Now, my other source of information that I talked with this week, it says that for the other source of funding that's predominantly coming out of Hong Kong, they're moving forward. For the very, very first time, they actually had put out what are called the stages and the steps that they have to go through in writing and with projected time dates for that. They had never, ever, ever done that before. So the first time we had something in writing. Now, there are stages to go through. It's not just all one complete step. What I can say is that the first stage is done. The second stage is going to take somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks, and then the third stage, I'm not at liberty to go into details about that. But let's just say it's progressing. But what I can say is those that are receiving their funding through specific banks in Hong Kong, some of those have already had funds moved into their individual paymaster bank accounts. They can't spend it yet, but it's been moved into their accounts and it's ready to move forward. So those are the things that we're hearing. It's all good news that is there. And those are the updates. What I could say is that things are progressing, because what I've always said, the thing that's been holding this up more than anything else has been safety and security. So the money would be safe and secure at our level, at the retail level for you and me. At the top level, they can move that money, but they hadn't been able to have it into a situation where it could move at our level. Now, what that means is that doesn't mean things are going to happen for you right away. At my level, I may be seeing some stuff happen possibly in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but yet could still take another month or two before all of that can filter down to your level because of all of the things that we have to go to. Okay? So, somebody just sent me a text message, and I want to thank you. Excuse me, I cannot watch your video on my phone while I'm doing a program, okay? Don't send me a text message saying, watch my video I just sent you. I can't do that, folks. I got a program to run here, and I'm not going to take the time out to watch your video. You can send me a quick text message that I can read, but I'm not going to watch a video. Come on, use common sense here, okay? But thank you. All right, so with that, Blanca, is there anything else? Those are the updates of what's happening in the currency situation. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Well, first of all, thanks for giving us an update. I'm sure a lot of people are going to appreciate that, and they're both very positive. Now, I remember one of the last updates you gave us, you really said you had a real good feeling of confidence about the process. You felt confidence about the people you know were conducting the process, and, you know, for the exchanges that you were involved with the people who had access to funds. And so I'm just saying, are you still on that vein? Are you still real confident? Have you gotten confirmation to continue to keep confidence? That maybe
Yes.
that is what I'm checking. Okay.
Yes. Here's what I can say. There's absolutely no doubt that money is out there and it's very real. That's not even a debatable issue. It's out there and it's very real. But remember, at the end of the day, somebody has to come up with these scores and scores of trillions, if not hundreds of trillions of dollars to pay out for all this kind of stuff. What we don't know is when that can be done in a safe manner, and how much is U.S. Treasury going to allow to be put into what is called a liquidity situation, which means it's money that can be moved into bank accounts that can be spent, because they're not going to allow too much to go too fast. And we don't know those details. I don't know that. I know there are people that are aware of those details. There are, in my conversations I've had with some of these very top sources, what we realize is that they don't want to tell me too much. See, my job is to be a public face. And if they tell me too much, then stuff can accidentally leak out, and then that then creates, stirs up the hornet's nest and shuts things down. So that's why I can say I don't know all of the intimate details of all this stuff. I do know the peripherals. I know the top stuff, what's going on. I know who the people are that are involved in moving this stuff. But those are confidential issues. But here's what I can say is we know the money is real. We know that there is every attempt to get this done, but we also have to realize it's not about you and me as individuals. We're at the bottom of the list. It's about coordinating this in a safe and secure manner for everybody all around the world, because this is a global changing event when this stuff gets carried out. This is not going to be just a one-shot deal. This is something that is going to, carry on for months and months. And project funding is something that's going to go on for some years, not just an overnight shot as well. This is only the very first start of stuff that's going to go on for an extended period of time, and it's going to be done in various steps along the way. So, okay, anything else then that you'd like to add to that?
Yes. Well, it's very positive news that some of our fellows in Hong Kong are starting to see some movement. And now, I know you've been very careful to kind of present to us the difference between an RV and the difference between the currency exchange. And would you characterize what's going on in Hong Kong as a currency exchange process or RV, or do you have any
Hong Kong is
insight
just
into that?
Hong Kong is the center where the money comes out of. That's the only thing that's Hong Kong at our level doesn't really mean anything other than that's where the money's coming from. Okay, that's where it's being moved out of, and there are some people that have had money placed in their bank accounts that are in Hong Kong, but they can't spend it. They can't move it yet. But that's what I've been told. Okay.
So it's hard to tell whether it's for currency exchange or for projects or for
I have no idea.
money.
I have no idea.
Moved. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
well,
that makes it a little bit more contextual what could be happening there. Okay. And I think, in terms of my questions about that, I think that's it. And I'm sure our listeners may have some more.
All right. Okay. Well, then, are we ready to go on with the program tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Folks, I want to thank you very much for also, if you saw, the newsletter that I had put out. Hold on here. I just want to take a check of what's going on here. So, in the newsletter that I had sent out, I had talked about that I was going to extend what I had talked about I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, the last big program, that the fact that this whole world is a holographic illusion, and this world of being a physical world is not real. That's something that's really hard to grasp and get our head around. And you would say, well, what is this? Why do I even need to know this? What's the purpose for all this? It's because understanding that, how we learn how to think differently, is really important for us in being able to make the transition to this new world that we're moving into. We're living in a world right now that there's massive changes that are going on what we would call the level of the energy that's coming into this world. We're moving into what is called a new cycle of how all the planets work and operate. There's a 26,000 year cycle, and we just completed that, and we just moved into it. When that happens, we move into what is called a new age and a new era. And here's what's happening. At this time, also what happened is that the Earth moved into this place in our galaxy of what is called this huge, massive photon band of photon light energy. And as we moved into that, the Earth is now being hit. It's being bathed very heavily by this photon light energy. Now, it's not something that you see, but what it does is when this photon light energy, and it's light energy that's at the quantum level, what it does, it picks up the energy of everything in this Earth. And it's being shown by the fact that the whole Schumann resonance, now the Schumann resonance is where they measure what is called the resonance and the vibration of the electromagnetic energy that surrounds the Earth. And since we've moved into this photon band, the Schumann resonance is picked up. And what that means is that we ourselves are picking up with it. It means all the energy that's happening in this Earth is beginning to pick up. And when that energy picks up, it gives way for us to have an increase in our sense of awareness and our sense of consciousness of what goes on around us. And that allows us as a human race to move into what is called a new sense of a higher state of evolutionary process of our awareness. And it also allows us to move away from the old paradigms that we've been in as a human race, where we're in this situation where there's been so much conflict and war and suffering and killing and pain and misery and anxiety and fear that goes on. It gives us the ability to move in beyond that. And when that happens, when we increase our awareness of what is really going on and what the truth really is to this world that we live in, it gives us the ability to shift and change our whole lives as well. And the end result of that is the ability to start moving into and being able to conducting and doing things that used to just seem improbable for us, used to seem just somewhat of miracles to us. When we pick up our energy and the energy begins to shift and change, and then we shift and change how we think, because our thoughts determine the energy of this process, we move into a new world of changing everything. What I was going to share with you is the fact that right now there are scientists here right now that are doing all of the things that we saw on Star Trek 30 years ago. And that was the group of scientists with A.R. Borden. and I've talked about him before in some of these programs. He organized a group of scientists that were known to be basically the smartest and brightest scientists in the world. And he had made a comment, and he said, everything that you saw on Star Trek 30 years ago, we do it all for real. We do all of that stuff. And he says, where do you think Star Trek got all their ideas to write the stuff about what could be done? We have the ability to time travel. We do that for real. We have the ability to do beam me up Scotty, teleport our bodies. We do that for real. We are the best remote viewers in the world. We have the ability of what is called the LERM process to be able to make things physically appear out of nothing right in front of us. All of this is documented, and they have the what is called even the white papers that they've written about how it takes place and what happens. In essence, what Borden was saying is, we are the scientists that understand the physics behind metaphysical events. Events that you would consider to be metaphysical, abnormal, phenomenal, or even miraculous. We know how it happens and why it happens. And in so many words, you're saying, you, us, as a collective human race, are now ready to start moving in to understand how to do that for yourself. And that's why it's important that we understand what is the true nature of the universe being holographic versus it being physical in our sensations. And that's what I want to go into tonight. In this contrast, what we see is we as a human race for the last 11,000 years, approximately that period of time, we've lived in a state of what is called a survival mentality. Everything was about surviving. Even still today, there are close to 4 billion people, more than half of the world's population, lives on less than $10 a day. What does that mean? They're in a survival mode. If you're only making $10 a day, everything in life is about you is just getting enough money to get enough food to be able to survive and have a roof over your head and to be able to take care of your children. They don't get to do much beyond that. They don't get to think much beyond that. They don't get to explore much beyond that because life is about survival. For us in advanced countries like the United States and others, yes, we have a lot more physically. We have better food, we have better accommodations, we have better health care, we have better technology, but still we're in a form of what we would call financial slavery because we're still slaves to our jobs. And we don't have a whole lot of time in our day to do this type of exploratory work to be able to move beyond a form of survival. We work our jobs to survive. And because if we don't have our jobs and if we don't have the income that comes from that, we're back into basic means of survival of just barely getting along. And then that's what takes up most of our time and our energy and our thought process. There were some really good papers that were written on the wingmakers.com website. And it talked about what is called a survival-based thinking process. And that's where the human race has been for about 11,000 years. And we are now beginning to move into what is called an energetic, exploratory type of a thinking process, that we get to put our energy into exploring instead of just surviving. And our thoughts are able to take us to where we can explore, we can open up, we can learn more, and we start learning about what is the real capability of the things that we get to do. Now, with that, it's important to understand the foundation, because in a survival-based world, we have been programmed to think that the world is just physical, is what it is. But in what is called an exploratory energetic world, we start thinking and realizing the world is really first and foremost comprised of nothing but of energy. I want to give an illustration, and I've done this before, and I've talked about it in the workshops, and I've given it here. We take our hand. You know, it feels very physical. It has all the appearance and all the sensations and the feelings of being very physical. But if I take this hand and I put it under an electron microscope, what do I see? What I end up seeing is nothing but 99% space. There's no physicality to it when there's 99% space. What I see are atoms and neutrons and electrons and protons that are all swirling around, and it's nothing but energy. So which is it? Is it physical or is it all space? It It can't be both. And what quantum level physics will tell us, it's just energy. But what happens is the sense of it being physical is it's a process and a projection that comes from our thoughts. Our thoughts is what gives it the sensation of being physical, but in reality that sensation is just an illusion. It's not real. And there's a reason where this comes into, and I'm going to do some videos, some teaching videos down the road where I'll go on more into depth about that. But what it really comes down to is that we have been programmed to think that the world is physical, because when we live in terms of thinking about physicality, we limit our ability to really discover who we are as a human race and our true potentiality of what we can produce. When we learn how to make the transition into thinking and understanding that the whole universe is nothing but energy, is all that it is, it opens up that exploration part of our minds. And it begins to realize that if it's just energy, that means there's unlimited potential of the things that we can do, because energy is unlimited in its ability to do that. And if we understand and take in the fact that the world is just a holographic illusion, and it's just a world of energy, we make a complete paradigm shift about how we think about ourselves in this world. And when we make this paradigm shift, it lets us begin to move into all kinds of unlimited potential of the things that can be done. Now, what I want to do here is I want to play a couple of videos that will that comes from a scientific perspective of understanding that the world. The very fact that you have these scientists, and this is published in the Physical Review journals, which means it's now becoming accepted into the scientific community that this is based on science and it's not something that's just a bunch of, woo-woo thinking stuff. Now, I want us to move into a little more of an explanatory video again about how the science is beginning to discover that this world is a holographic universe, and that it's a whole new branch of science, it's a whole new branch of understanding. And you'll hear them say, if we can basically grasp this and start to understand it, this will be one of the biggest breakthroughs that we've ever have that changes about how.
This leads naturally to wonder, are people affecting the world?
As we examine the fabric of the cosmos ever more closely, we may well find far more surprises than anyone ever imagined. Take me, for example. I seem real enough, don't I? Well, yes. But surprising new clues are emerging that everything, you and I, and even space itself, may actually be kind of hologram. That is, everything we see and experience, everything we call our familiar three-dimensional reality, may be a projection of information that's stored on a thin, distant, two-dimensional surface. Sort of the way the information for this hologram is stored on this thin piece of plastic. Now, holograms are something we're all familiar with, from the security symbol you find on most credit cards. But the universe is a hologram? That's one of the most drastic revisions to our picture of space and reality ever proposed. And the evidence for it comes from some of the strangest realms of space, black holes.
This is a real disconnect, and it's very hard to get your head around. Modern ideas coming from black holes tell us that reality is two-dimensional, that the three-dimensional world, the full-bodied three-dimensional world, is a kind of image of a hologram on the boundary of the region of space.
This is a very strange thing. When I was a younger physicist, I would have thought any physicist who said that was absolutely crazy.
Here's a way to think about this. Imagine I took my wallet and threw it into a black hole. What would happen? We used to think that since nothing, not even light, can escape the immense gravity of a black hole, my wallet would be lost forever. But it now seems that may not be the whole story. Recently, scientists exploring the math describing black holes made a curious discovery. Even as my wallet disappears into the black hole, a copy of all the information it contains seems to get smeared out and stored on the surface of the black hole, in much the same way that information is stored in a computer. So, in the end, my wallet exists in two places. There's a three-dimensional version that's lost forever inside the black hole, and a two-dimensional version that remains on the surface as information.
The information content of all the stuff that fell into that black hole can be expressed entirely in terms of just the outside of the black hole. The idea then is that you can capture what's going on inside the black hole by referring only to the outside.
And in theory, I could use the information on the outside of the black hole to reconstruct my wallet. And here's the truly mind-blowing part. Space within a black hole plays by the same rules as space outside a black hole or anywhere else. So if an object inside a black hole can be described by information on the black hole surface, then it might be that everything in the universe, from galaxies and stars to you and me, even space itself, is just a projection of information stored on some distant two-dimensional surface that surrounds us. In other words, what we experience as reality may be something like a hologram.
Is the three-dimensional world an illusion in the same sense that a hologram is an illusion? Perhaps. I'm inclined to think yes, that the three-dimensional world is a kind of illusion, and that the ultimate precise reality is the two-dimensional reality at the surface of the universe.
This idea is so new that physicists are still struggling to understand it. But if it's right, just as Newton and Einstein completely changed our picture of space, we may be on the verge of an even more dramatic revolution. For something that's such a vital part of our everyday lives, space remains kind of like a familiar stranger. It's all around us, but we're still far from having unmasked its true identity. That may take 100 years, it may take 1,000 years, or it may happen tomorrow. But when we solve that mystery, we'll take a giant step toward fully understanding the fabric of the cosmos.
That last statement, when we can understand that, we will take a giant step to understanding what is called the fabric of the cosmos. And what that really means is that if this world is just a holographic, representation, it only comes from the power and the projection of our thoughts. And it's based on how we think that determines this. If we limit our thinking to the fact that we are nothing more than a physical world and everything is physical and it's static, then we're limited to that. If we allow ourselves to think that the fact is the world is holographic and it's energetic, it means it unfolds and releases a complete unlimited perspective on the things that we can do. I want to come back again to the statements that A.R. Borden said. Everything you saw on Star Trek 30 years ago, we do it all for real. They could time travel. They could teleport their bodies. They were the best remote viewers in the world. They could make things appear absolutely in thin air out of nothing. Why? Because they allowed themselves to make the transition of letting go of the old paradigm of things being just solid and static and physical and moving into the new world of understanding at the quantum level there's unlimited potential. One of the great ways to illustrate this is understanding the difference between what is called Newtonian physics, that people my age, what we were taught in school, in contrast to quantum physics. Newtonian physics says everything is physical, everything is solid, everything is static, all of our DNA is established, all of our genes is established, and once it's established and it's physical, it's solid, it cannot change. It is what it is, and that is what you need to live with. We lived with Newtonian physics because it was the only thing that we knew. We didn't understand anything else. And then quantum physics comes into existence. And that's when they're able to start researching what is the basic foundational structure of everything that goes on within our world. And when the scientists started moving into quantum physics, they realized it wasn't a world of physicality, it was a world of energy. And energy has unlimited potential in what it can do. And energy is not limited in being static, it can change. Quantum physics gave us the ability to know the fact that we can take what is a physical body and we can actually go through a process of beam me up, Scotty, because what appears to be physical is not really physical. It gets in touch with all the energy and it transmutes that energy form to another location and lets it come back and reappear in a less vibrating frequency that gives it the sensation of physicality. The person that probably understood this the best and the person that has been the best prototype example for us was simple. It was Jesus. He knew that the world was not limited, and therefore he understood that by the power of his thoughts, he could do these unlimited miracles that he did. Changing water into wine was not a problem because he wasn't limited to physical restrictions. Being able to feed 5,000 people from a few loaves and fishes was not a physical limitation because he knew it was just energy, and energy can be shifted and changed and multiplied and expanded. And it's the power of the human thought that does that. It's our human thought, the belief that we have within that allows us to take energy and shift and change energy to make it be what it is that we want it to be. Now, what I want to do next, I want to play a video about how thoughts affect our reality. And it's our thoughts that really program what it is that we have the.
This leads naturally to wonder, are people affecting the world of reality that they see? You betcha they are. Every single one of us affects the reality that we see, even if we try to hide from that and play victim. We all are doing it.
Just tell me where you are. Good. But hurry, will you, please, because these models are giving me a headache.
10 minutes. Emoto became terribly interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the four elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
Absolutely. Thought alone can completely change the body.
Most people don't affect reality in a consistent, substantial way because they don't believe they can. They write an intention and then they erase it because they think that's silly. I can't do that. And then they write it again and then they erase it. So time average, it's a very small effect. And it really comes down to the fact that they believe they can't do it.
It's our thoughts that can have the ability to restructure the content of energy. Because you saw these water molecules, well, that was the physical structure of it. What it really was, it was the energy that was coming from our thoughts that puts this out. There's a new science out there that's called the science of memetics, and it's studying what are called these memes. And what they're discovering is that our thoughts produce these basic electromagnetic subquantum particle called memes, and they go out and they begin to affect everything that is around us. Now, let's watch one more video, and it's called, the Dr. Quantum Double Slit Experiment, because what that does, it shows you how the power of thought begins to basically determine what can be the substance of what we would call matter for what is there. Also, I want to make a side comment. All of these videos that I'm playing with you and showing you here tonight on the program, you can find them all yourself on YouTube. They're all out there on YouTube.
As mentioned earlier, everything is made up of infinite potentiality, and the moment consciousness decides to create from that, creation takes place. The findings of physicist Thomas Young in his famous double slit experiment helps to show this, and while doing so, sheds light on the quantum field and how our entire reality operates.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter, through. We get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched.
So what does this tell us about our reality? It tells us that the moment there is consciousness viewing and defining how things should act, the infinite potentials act in that manner. The electron acted in the way consciousness defined it should act. We see two slits, we have particles. We define that they must pass through the two slits and create two lines on the other side. However, before it is defined, the particle carries out every possibility. It is limitless. Consciousness, The observer, who we truly are, is in control of our entire reality. How we define our world and what plays out is entirely up to us on a collective scale. The world is infinite potential and infinite possibility. Our consciousness can shape it in any way we choose.
If you're catching what I'm catching, is that the fact that everything that is around us, if we think it is static and physical, it's because that's the definition that we are giving to it to create it be that way. If we can understand that it's not static and physical, it's just a hologram, which is a projection from our thoughts, then we are the ones that are determining and giving value to everything that happens around us in this universe that we live in and everything that we begin to experience. Which means is by the power of our thought, because of the definition that we give to it, because of the what we're telling the electrons what to do, we have the ability to move into what is called an unlimited potential. And by that, with that comes the understanding that it has that ability, because it's not, in reality, it's not a physical substance. It's only determined that way because of the collective thinking that we as a human race have been projected to think and programmed to think for thousands and thousands of years. But what we have is the ability to shift and change that. And that comes back again to the group of scientists that worked with A.R. Borden and also with Dr. Neruda in the Neruda interviews. He was a part of that. They understood this. They understood that the only limitation to the world that they experience or what they can produce is based upon the power of their thinking. Now, when you think and you say that, well, does that mean I can just start thinking and I can produce anything that I want? Not really, because what you have is unconscious programming that is stronger than the conscious thoughts at the moment, and that unconscious programming that is old stuff is blocking the ability for you to shift and change. Our minds are like master computers. And what we have are these files or these programs that operate at the subconscious and the unconscious level. And those are the ones that are predominant ones that are producing the energy that is creating around us. So everything that we begin to experience, everything that we know that is out there, everything that we are producing in our lives, all the experiences that are taking place for us, it's really coming from the unconscious and subconscious minds, because they are the levels that are producing the memes that are producing everything that we're experiencing. When you reprogram the unconscious mind from a world of limited physical substance to a world of energetic reality that has unlimited potential, is when we begin to be able to produce those things. See, Borden's group, they knew that, and they understood that. And that's why they could do and practice a process of what is called LERM, L-E-R-M. It's called Light Encoded Reality Matrix. They understood that there was a matrix and there was a world out there, and they understood that light was the very substance of all the energy that we have, and that light could be encoded, and when light is encoded, it produces these visions and these images of what we think is matter and substance and physical reality, when in really it's just nothing again but a hologram, a form of light that's been encoded. They had learned how to go into what is called a kind of a quasi-meditative state, to close their eyes and to begin to think and to begin to develop pictures in their minds of something that they wanted to produce. And when they could do that, and they learned how to do that, they were finding within 3 to 5 seconds they were able to make anything appear right in front of them out of nothing, because it was all a matter of encoding the light. They tap into the light, they connect with the light, and they says, I want to bring a new energy substance to this light that I am sensing and feeling and knowing that is around me, and I'm going to encode it with what I want it to be, because they knew that their mind had the ability to do that. if you read the Neruda interviews, and when Dr. Neruda is being interviewed by this everyday common journalist by the name of Sarah, and he's explaining this to her, how he could make basically anything appear, she says, now I really know you're crazy. It says, I was beginning to question the reality of all this stuff. It says, but you're telling me you can basically, do hocus pocus stuff and just make stuff appear out of nothing. He says, yeah, sure, watch this. And she's sitting there, and in the interview it describes within a few seconds there's this ball of yarn that just appears absolutely out of nothing right in front of her. She picks it up. She says, this is real. It has all the substance of being very real. The yarn is there. It's a little bit warm, but this just came absolutely out of nowhere. You're sitting over there. I'm here. There's no magic going on in between us. And he says, yeah, I'm able to do that. And she says, okay, the ball of yarn is pretty simple. Can you do this with $1 million? He said, sure, I can. But here's the problem. If I produce $1 million for you, how are you going to explain to the people at the bank and where you got it? And how are you going to justify where this had come from? And then on top of that, can you handle as much as the fact that I can make it go away and I can take it from you just as well? And she said, well, that's a little different. He says, you're wanting this $1 million, but what you're really wanting it for is your own selfish and greedy means, because you're wanting something to be able to prove something that is here. And she says, well, you really have a point there. And then she says this, you're asking me to do these interviews with you, and I am having to take 2 months off of work. I am needing to basically go live in a hotel and live in a quiet, secluded place, and I'm losing 2 months of salary as well as the cost of expenses that I have here. Can you produce and give me $10,000 to make up for everything I'm losing? He said, sure, I can do that. And in about 3 seconds later, there's a pile of $100 bills sitting right in front of her, around $10,000. She picks it up and she says, this is real. This is very real. She said, yes, because we understand and we know how to do this from a term of physics in conjunction with how the earth actually operates and this universe works with energy. It's all about energy and combining energy and light with the power of the human thought that lets us give us everything that we want. And he says, when you learn to think that way, this is what you can do yourself. And she says, can you teach me how to do this? And Neruda says, yeah, we could teach you how to do this. Now, it would take about 2 weeks, and we would have to take you to our laboratories so you can be there, but you could do it in about 2 weeks. But when we bring in all of our new staff and our new scientists, because we are bringing them up to speed, most of them pick this up in just a few days. But that's a little different because they've already undone all the old stuff and they understand there's no limitation in their thinking. And here was what was really interesting, what Neruda said. Once you program your mind at the unconscious level that this can be done for you, and you have the ability to do it after the first time, and once you've experienced it, it's just secondhand and second nature, and you can do it as much as you want. You can imagine these scientists. It wasn't about money for them. They had the ability to produce any amount of money that they wanted. It wasn't about possessions for them, because they could basically produce anything of possessions that they wanted. For them, see, wanting money, wanting possessions is based in that old survival consciousness paradigm. They had clearly moved into what is called the new energy exploratory paradigm of thinking. What motivated them is all the research that they could do and the new things that they continued to discover and the unlimited potential of what went on for them in life. It wasn't about money and possessions. Life for them was about the joy of discovery, the joy of exploration, the joy of discovering this unlimited potential that was available for them. That's who they are. Now, I'm running into basically up to where we're about coming up to the 1 hour mark here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and make the shift and move into this. And I wanted to do this introduction tonight about how we, as a human race, have the ability to start learning this process. Borden had developed some white papers. He was limited in his ability to come out into the public because his group of scientists were so advanced they were 50 to 100 years ahead of anything that's being produced in what we call, the conventional or tangible world around us today. They were so far advanced that it was very difficult for them to come out into the public, because if they did, number one, the cabal would shut them down, or because it was such a threat to them, or number two, the academic community would basically end up laughing at them and consider them crazy and stupid, and would put them in, because it would happen in such a large degree, it would basically disenfranchise their research, and that it wouldn't have credibility to it. So they knew that they could never really come out publicly with this information until the right appropriate time. So what Borden did, he never came out into the public, but he developed and wrote these white papers, knowing that these would be ready to be released at the right time, when it could be accepted. You've heard me say in the past, see now, my friend Michael Lee Hill, he was tutored by Borden for the last 5 years that Borden was alive. Borden died and transitioned about 4 years ago. But Michael was tutored by Borden. He became very close friends with him. Borden gave all of his white papers to Michael. And here's what I can share, but I'm limited in what I can do. I cannot release them. Michael gave them all to me. And I'm starting to study and research and going through them and taking them in and learning to develop how to think differently to do this myself. There will be a point in time, and down the road I'll begin to share this process with all of us so that we can go through. But the most important thing is we just don't want to jump into this. I want to learn right now through what is called a means of greed, or a means of self-gratification, or a means of I want this because I'm fearful of allowing someone else to have more power and control over me. It's important that we don't use it in that manner, because it has the ability to backfire you because of the energy that you're putting into it. It has to come from a place of what I would call a high sense of heart consciousness. Now, next week probably that's what I'll start taking into the next step of all of this. But what I wanted to do this week is to introduce us to this potential that is coming our way of understanding what it is that we get to produce within our lives. It's one thing to have all this money coming our way. But money, again, is just a projection of a physicality issues that is designed to help us through this survival thinking process. The real issue is to take a resource such as money, and for us to move into the exploratory thinking process, the unlimited process, and watch what we can do with it. Watch what we can take place, that we can do more than just give money to people, but we can take it and produce it and put a thought energy into it that watches it multiply, watches it being able to touch people, watches it being able to change people from the inside, from what is called a heart consciousness perspective. So that's what I want to do for tonight on the program. And with that, I think, Blanca, I'm ready for you to come back in. And are you there? And then how are you doing?
Here I am. And hopefully people can hear me.
I can hear you just fine.
Echo, but hopefully the echo won't be too distracting. It comes and goes, so hopefully it won't be too bad. But there's been a very, very interesting, I'd say, chunk of information that you put here. And you've shared some of these ideas before, but I think it's really crystallized here, especially when you talked about now you shared the concept of a survival-based consciousness, which has been predominant experience for us for many generations, and then a consciousness of exploration, which is the opportunity that faces us in the future. And I think many of us are already experiencing that now. We would not be open to such an event as this currency exchange or a financial shift unless we were of an open enough consciousness to contemplate that, because many people just think it's a very silly idea.
Sure.
But in this process, what role, and you did touch on it when you talked about the subconscious, what role do you see the genetic mind and the collective consciousness plays in this whole idea of shifting from survival-based consciousness to exploratory consciousness?
We begin to survival-based consciousness at its very root is fear-based, because we're afraid that somebody's going to have more power over us. We are unconsciously afraid that someone's going to have control over us. And so we do whatever, and we're basically also afraid of dying. And it's an unconscious fear that drives us in what is called survival-based consciousness. Now, there's different levels of it, but on a collective level, that's where we as a humanity have been programmed, and we've been living that way for almost 11,000 years. When you move away from survival-based consciousness and you move into exploratory-based consciousness, you start letting go of the fear, because the fear fades away. And you then start moving into what is possibilities, and it produces a sense of discovery, a sense of joy, a sense of, anticipation. And all of that happens at a very positive, higher vibration of energy thoughts versus survival-based thoughts. Survival-based thoughts are basically very low vibrational energy thoughts. And we need to move into that higher sense of vibration. And now what's happening as we're going through this shift and change in our planet, and all this new photon light energy is coming in, it's giving us the opportunity to move with it. Our consciousness opens up, our expectations opens up, the possibilities open up. And with that, then we begin to become a people who create shift and change around us on a very positive basis instead of a survival-based basis. Survival-based consciousness is very similar to what I call separation consciousness that I've talked about. And at the very root of it, it's what creates all of our problems. The warring, the killing, the conflicts, the fear, the anxieties, the attacks, the judgments that we placed upon others, they're all fear-based, survival-based consciousness behaviors. And when we start moving into exploratory, positive-based behaviors, we start coming from the place of a sense of compassion, forgiveness, understanding, potentiality that is there. We start seeing the world entirely differently. And when we start seeing the world entirely differently, and we start looking at it from a place of a higher consciousness basis level, that's what we begin to produce. And when we start doing that on a collective basis, we begin to produce this very, very powerful, what is called this heart consciousness energy that comes out of us and begins to shift and change everything around us. And that's what I want to go into next week, is in talking about that. Did that kind of, in a roundabout way, answer your question?
Yes, and so it sounds that just by definition, that if one wants to move into more of an exploratory-based consciousness, it does take work, and you've shared in many other some practical steps to break from that survival-based or separation consciousness. But a big step is to release fear. But we have to recognize, because we've been so programmed to be in fear, we made fear to let go of our fears.
Yes. Yeah. The first thing about undoing the fear is you have to learn how to recognize it. That whenever it shows up, to understand it and know it what it is, and then to immediately going into releasing it and letting it go. And that's how you reprogram your whole thinking. That's how you reprogram the old programming that is in us. Because fear has been such a dominant part of our lives, as for us as a human race, is that it controls us in so many ways. The elite, what we call controllers, the cabal, they have always known how to use the power of fear to manipulate us. They go out and create wars, and they create these fearful events to be able to keep us in a fearful state. They put us in forms of financial slavery to keep us in a fearful state. They begin to program us with information that puts us into a fearful state. They understood that if you can keep a group of people or a large collection of people, if you can keep them in fear, you can control them. And so they understood that, and they knew that. And one of our responsibilities is to learn how to identify the fear that comes at us and to let it go and not let it have any impact upon our lives. And that's all a matter of choice. The choices that we want to make, that do we want to do that work to understand that. Because see, to me, fear is one of the most destructive energies that we have in our world, and fear is the greatest enemy of the soul. Fear creates more problems than anything else. It's a very, very low vibratory energy, and it has basically 100 different types of faces of how it will look and appear. But when you understand what fear is and what it does to you, and you learn how to heal that, it's amazing how much your life will change.
That's right. We're also very familiar, and especially if we pay attention to those lower fear-based and survival-based reactions and energy. So, as you say, they need to be worked with and healed to actually free us up for a more exploratory-based consciousness. And you mentioned some of the principles that quantum physics embraces. So a more exploratory-based consciousness from what you were talking about is one that recognizes that there are infinite possibilities, and that it's a consciousness that takes into the fact that there is an observer-created reality, that there is a conscious relationship to what we're experiencing and what we see happening in our world, that we have to take a holistic or holographic approach to viewing life. Are these some of the things that you would kind of characterize more of an exploratory-based consciousness?
Yeah. See, it's when we think in terms and we allow ourselves to always be aware of the fact that the world is nothing but different forms of energy, which gives us unlimited potential, and we think in alignment with that, then it opens up all these possibilities. When we think in terms of just the physical world, it also goes with it hand in hand is the limitations, i.e. fear-based thinking process. It all comes down to the power of our thoughts. We are the ones that are creating everything that goes on around us. And with that, it helps us to understand that we can then, if you get that and you understand that, you can never be a victim from something else, because you are the one that's always creating it within your own life. But you and I don't go out and consciously say, I'm going to choose, to be a victim today. No, it happens at the unconscious level, and you're not aware of it. And that unconscious level is how we've been programmed in our past, and that's what we get to undo. We get to undo and shift and change that programming. So, are we about ready to go into callers? I'm sorry, go ahead.
To make the observation that again, the default setting for us has been survival-based consciousness, and there are many of us already starting to make the shift to what you're calling more of an exploratory-based consciousness. Very important you brought up also about a heart consciousness, because the heart understands it. If we think, there's just so many ideas, it's too abstract, what we can say is just go back to the heart.
Yeah.
The heart understands all of it.
It does. The heart understands all of that, and I'll get into that next week about what is called heart coherence or heart consciousness, and how it produces this very, very powerful energy field. And what science has discovered is inside the heart is a second brain. It's a very, very small brain, but it has within it a very powerful potential of what it can produce. This brain, the second brain inside of our heart, for most of us in humanity, it's been somewhat in a dormant phase, because see, if you're living in survival-based consciousness, that brain goes dormant, is what it does. When you begin to open yourselves up, letting go of the fear, moving into possibilities, learning in things of exploratory and expansion, and coming from that place of love, that heart gets activated. And when it gets activated, it starts to producing this very, very powerful quantum energy field that comes out from us. And I'll have a video that I'll share next week that really just displays that very well. So, okay. Anything else there? Are we ready to move on to callers?
You and I can talk for hours about this, but I'd love to hear either questions or comments that the listeners have.
Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's go into callers. I'll take that very first one, and then you could, at the area code 702, and then you can do the one right after that, okay?
Should we give out the number just in case people...
Oh, that's right. If the number for people that want to call in, I forgot about that. That number is 515-605-9356. Again, the number is 515-605-9356. And when you call in, you press 1 on your touch-tone phone, and that basically brings up a little flag for us saying, yes, you want to come on the air and you have some questions or some comments and that you would like to make, okay? That number, 515-605-9356, okay? So I'll go into this first caller without you screening them, and that is an individual with area code 702. So here we go. There you are, caller. You're coming up. There you are, area code 702. You're on the air here. What can I do for you tonight? What can we help you with?
Yeah, hi, Dave. Yeah, hi, Dave. This is Jake, and I just wanted to catch up with you specifically with some security issues regarding currencies.
Okay.
That, I like you, I go back to the earliest days of the 2012 scenario. So over that period of time, like you, developed a lot of sources. Some have been very reliable, some not so much. But from at least 3 separate, long-time, reliable sources, I had the information that the currencies that you, Dave, have aggravated are now missing. Aggregated, not aggravated, but are missing. Those currencies are no longer where they were. And I wanted to get your feedback on that because it comes, the information comes from sources very, very directly close to you. So
There's nothing missing. We know exactly where it is, and we know who has it and where it is. There is nothing missing. So I don't know who or why they would have a basis to say that. It tells you that their information is just plain flat out false, and they don't know what they're talking about. There is no currencies missing. We know where it is, we know where it's physically located, and we know who has it. Okay?
Okay.
End of debate.
I used the term missing. They used the term stolen. But and it was from sources this weekend and in Sedona and connected to Mr. and Mrs. M directly.
I'm not going to comment on that. We know where it is, we know who has it, and we know what's going on. And I am not going to go into comments beyond that because that's the type of stuff that creates a lot of speculation and a lot of problems that people start talking about that creates very serious issues. That's it. Because when you start saying that stuff's missing, then people will take that and they'll start running with fear. And I cut that off, and I cut you off specifically on that with a very strong statement to correct that. It says, we know where it is and we know where it's located. And whoever said,
and I did not have any funds there, so it wasn't a matter of any of my currency. The specifics coming from M&M were just that they felt like the whole reval thing was a ruse, and so
M&M never said that. They never said that. They never said that. I was just with them this week. I spent 2 hours with them this week in private conversations with them. They have never said that the reval was a ruse. I don't know where you're getting those kind of statements. Those are the types of things that people start telling lies about, they start telling false stories about, and why there's so much. You need to be really careful about the comments you're making about what they're saying. Unless you yourself personally have talked with them directly, you be careful that.
Reporting to you what came to me directly from a source that, according to them, sat down with M&M, and that was what they were told.
Well, then they're misunderstanding something, okay?
But like you say, there's misunderstandings that happen all the time. I just wanted to get clarification from you directly.
Everything is fine. Now, I did state there was an attempt from what we would call cabal sources to attempt to shut the system down. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to speculate on any more other than that. Yes, and maybe some of that could have created some of the misinterpretations or the misperceptions about what took place there. There was some attempts to shut the system down with those currencies.
Got it. Okay, because that's been specific regarding, your aggregate dollars, not in general. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify and of where things were at. But it's like you say, it's easy to get different things started that mean one thing in the moment and mean something else later on.
It's important to understand that M&M are not in the currency exchange business. That's secondary to them. They don't involve themselves in that. They don't put a lot of time and energy into it. That's not their focus. And that's not what they do. They don't. I've been involved in this currency exchange stuff now for more than 5 years. And it's also important to know that they are not the only funding source. There's other funding sources as well. And there's a larger picture about how all of this is developing. And that's about all I can say right now. Okay.
Got it. Well, I don't want to push you past the point that you're comfortable in, Dave. I just wanted to give you, hear it from you in relation to those kind of things. So.
Well, I just know when that's the type of conversation that you should have had with me privately and not on the air. Is because what's going to happen? This is the type of.
This is the. Touch with you privately because I've never had a. Yeah.
And I had a very strong reaction to what you had to say, and this is why I'm very limited to what I can say on the air, because that's the type of stuff that people can edit out and make it say whatever they want, and then it can go crazy all over the blog sites, and it creates all kinds of speculation and problems, and that's exactly what the cabal sources want to do. You have to be, because basically you were putting words into the mouths of people of things that they didn't say that. And you need to be really careful. But when you start making those kind of statements, that about 10,000 people are going to listen to.
Dave, you're shooting the messenger. I didn't put any words in anybody's mouth. They put the words in my ear as being directly from them.
But Jake, Jake, I'm going to stop you. Jake, I'm going to stop you, Jake. You're the one who said it on the air that 10,000 people are going to listen to and misinterpret. That's the seriousness of a statement like that you make on the air about what you said that they said.
Yeah, I'm sorry I triggered you. I thought you were in a heart-conscious space there, but maybe not.
Jake, let me be very direct. How many assassination attempts have you had on your life? Hello?
We don't know. Yeah, no.
Hello?
All we know about assassination attempts is what you have speculated happened for you. I don't know that it did, but
goodbye, Jake. You know, you're getting into areas, Jake, that it's not safe to talk about on the air. You basically were making statements and quotes of what other people have said, and this is why I have to be extremely careful about what I can and cannot say on the air. And yes, I was very demonstrative tonight. And I'm sorry, but it's not just me that you create problems for. This is the type of stuff where stuff gets shut down for us when we want to bring it forward. When you come on the air and people said, then you were basically saying that money went missing, money was stolen, and that those were comments that had come from Mr. M and Mrs. M, and you didn't know that yourself, that you're making some very demonstrative statements that you did not know were true, or they weren't. And that's what creates the problems. And that's what I've talked about, and about how people can, take this and they'll take a specific little quote and then they'll run with it, and the next thing you know, it's being blasted out there on all the blog sites, and it's creating all kinds of serious problems. That's what the cabal would love to do, okay? And I'm sorry, Jake, I cut you off, but that conversation needed to end, okay? All right, so thank you. And folks, thanks for understanding that. This is not a small issue, folks. I'm not kidding. There are cabal personnel that would love to do everything that they can to stop us in this process. And when I start bringing this stuff here on the air, it kind of creates some problems that are there. I have to be very careful about what I say. So, I'm all right. Let's move on. Okay, I'm going to go to the next caller. His area code is 617, and his name is Max. Max, you're on the air, and what can I help you with here tonight?
Hi, Dave. Max Prudential here.
Sure.
I have nothing to say about that other call except that there was plenty, if someone did record it, they could make some very selective editing and create havoc.
Yes, they could.
I'm a long-time student of A Course in Miracles. I've read all the Gary Renard books, and I'm just saying that for people that may not have heard me call in before. And I listen to Ken Wapnick all the time. So, with regard to the course's position, that everything is an illusion, we live in a dream, none of this is real, I'm still driven to try to understand from a course point of view, relative to the information that you are presenting tonight, about that we live in a hologram and it's not real. Are those positions from the course and what you're saying identical?
They parallel what's the course. You know, when you read through the course and you read Gary Renard's books, and you know, not everybody is ready to be able to move into that type of a process of thinking. And so what I like to try to do is be the bridge in between and helping people to grasp and understand that. But remember what the course teaches, yes, the world is not real, it's not out there and it's not real, but we still exist in this world of form. And we have to give respect to the world of form, and we have to continue to live and operate in the world of form until we're done and ready to make our own transitions. And so you still deal with the world of form is what is there. And I remembered this one quote that came, out of one of Gary's books. As long as you're in a body, you're going to do what a body does, and you're going to experience what a body experiences. Even though it's not real, you're still going to experience that. At the end of the day, it's about how we all process, it's about how we all process the experience. That's the value of where stuff is. And that's what the world of form is for. We go through these experiences in this world of form that has the sensations of being real, has the experiences of being real, and it helps us undo the separation of the ego consciousness. Now, that's where my thinking is on it. Does that help with where you're coming from?
It helps. It does dovetail with another question I want to ask as a follow-up related to that. Within the form, or this four-dimensional reality that we think that we're in, you're saying that we can use our thoughts and what the Course would call magic or making versus creating.
Sure.
Do whatever it is that we want to do and manifest whatever it is that we want to manifest.
Sure.
However, from my point of view, I'm not really interested in that. I would appreciate using money to bring people along and to really help their lot in life, but I'm not sold on the fact that this is something that really needs to be part of our experience for serious devoted course students. What would you say about that?
For serious devoted course students, which are less than 2% of the world's population. There's another 98% out there that doesn't understand that, and they're not ready to move into be serious course students. You see, it's fine for you. It's fine for you, Max, and that's okay. But how do you take people that aren't there? You see, that's a progression of our own growth and development. So in the process, you still have to deal with them with where they are. And there are bridge points to help them bring along through this process. And I think that's where I come from, is to be one of those bridge points. If I can introduce to people that the world is not real, it's a holographic illusion, and if I can introduce to people that you have unlimited potential in your thoughts, and they start adopting that, then they are so much closer to be able to go to the next step of where you are. And that's the purpose behind that. We're not all in the same place. I'm not here to be a strict course-only teacher. That's not my job. That's not my role. And I've had great discussions with Gary and Cindy Renard about that. We each have different roles in what we are here to do. Gary is a very solid, committed, pure, non-dualistic course teacher. That's his job. And that's good for people who are ready for that. But the vast majority of the world's population aren't ready for that. They're not ready to step right into that and grasp it and understand it and go with it. So, but there are ways to bring them along the way.
And I did tell Blanca I didn't want to put you on the spot. I hope I haven't.
No.
That you
That's
weren't
fine.
picking up that I was somehow levying any kind of criticism or anything either.
Well, it's a whole little difference when we're going to talk about course issues versus talking about security issues of all this money. I mean, I don't have any fear about what goes on out there with all this, cabal-based issues and stuff like that. I am fine. But there's a vast majority of others that don't understand that, and so I have to be very careful about that. And I have to, well, I don't need to say any more. That's enough. So, yeah.
The last thing I'll say that just kind of puts a bow on it is that clearly we are wherever we are completely non-coincidentally. And so I do agree with you that we have to be responsible for the circumstances and the people that are showing up in our experience, which certainly includes relating to them where they're at, which is what the author of the course says as well.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Great. Have a great evening. Okay, all right. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, we're going to go on to the next caller. His name is Michael, and let's see here now. Michael, you're on the air, and what can I help you with here tonight?
Hello, Dave. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Yeah, I've been with you since the beginning. Within 5 years, I said.
I'm sorry, what'd you say there, that last statement?
I've been with you from the beginning. You said it's been about 4 or 5 years, right?
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering, you think this time that you said that, it's really going to get started? Because, it's kind of happened before. You kind of thought that things were going to happen, and, they get shut down, something like that happens. I was just wondering what your feelings are. Do you think this time, the conscious change process is really starting?
Yes, based on the information that I have now, and that's also based on the fact that nothing that is unforeseen comes up and is going to basically, throw another monkey wrench into the process. There's been multiple times they've been right and ready to move forward, and then a monkey wrench gets thrown into the process by different cabal sources that want to shut the whole thing down. But based on now information, what is available, they already are putting the wheels into motion for this stuff to go.
Okay, because I know a while back you didn't want to do my workshop, so you thought you were going to get busy, having to do the second round or whatever. And then you got some more workshops scheduled. The indicator if something's really going to happen, or if something does happen, you're going to be able to do these scheduled other workshop.
A workshop only takes a couple days of my time per month. That's all it takes. You see, so I can continue to schedule workshops even while all this other stuff, the process is going on, and I want to continue to make that available to people. So, how I'm scheduling and when I'm scheduling my workshops does not predicate about what is happening with when these funds will start to come out. I just don't do that anymore. I just don't. I don't go there anymore with that stuff.
Because
we don't know.
Like something's going to happen, and you don't want to have a workshop and they have a meeting, or
I can schedule around that. There's 30 days in a month, and a workshop only takes about 2 of those. I can schedule around that.
All right. So you think this time might be the real McCoy?
I've already made my comments on that. What did I just say? I've already stated it 3 or 4 times tonight. Even in the conversations I had earlier with Blanca.
I know, but so many times it happens and it gets shut down or whatever, and start back from zero.
Yes, it does.
I'm trying to be negative, and I want to believe it with my heart. I've been following again. I think you had like Estrogen on, so many people on the show, so many different people. You had Charla, you had the Ambassador, Nephrophily on.
And how many times have I said everything has changed? Everything has changed. This is a constant.
Of course, yeah.
You can't go back to stuff 3 and 4 years ago and put that in today's context because it's not the same world, and it's not the same environment, and it's not the same stuff. It's been a learning process for all of us along the way, and it's always a constant changing scenario because of the people who are involved and also the opposition to it. This is always changing. Nothing is static in this stuff, and it never has been. So when you just brought up stuff about people I had on the program for 3 and 4 years ago that I've had no contact.
I'm just trying to tell you that I'm following you, and
I know, and I understand that.
I want to believe you.
I can tell you what I can tell you. I can be as honest as I can. Now, how you process that and how you think about that, that's your choice. I can't make you think one way or the other. But I can tell you what I know now at this moment of what's happening right now at this moment, and I have no control of what goes on tomorrow. Okay? I mean, I wish I did, but
so many times, look, there's so many times that you made us feel like, the art's leaving. Get on the boat, or it's gone. You gotta hurry.
How you choose to react to that, Michael, is your choice. You're the one who's choosing to react to that and get all up and thinking, yes, yes, yes. I've had a lot of people that don't do that. They understand it's an ongoing process, and none of this stuff is predictable at this point in time. And then none of it is etched in stone. It's a matter of just being patient and waiting and letting it be there. And then how you're going to choose to react to that is your choice. I can't control that for you. How you feel about that is your choice.
So you feel that it's definitely going to happen. It's a matter of time.
Michael, I've already now 4 times commented on that tonight. Are you listening? How many times do I have to say the same thing over and over again? What have I said?
It's starting in China. The other paid people are trying to get it together, have meetings with Trump. They're Putin and the rest of the world. But I mean, you think like, okay, one more question. Is there anything going to happen, like specific, like, we talked about the gold standard, with the United States changes to type of gold-backed currency? I mean, do you still feel that any one specific thing that we can see happen in the media that's going to trigger?
I'm not going to make any comments on that because I'm not going to go out and make a statement and then have someone come back, 3 weeks later and say, you said this, when I have no control over any of that. I don't know. I have no idea what they're going to do. So I don't know how else to respond to that because I don't know what's going to happen on the gold standard. I know there's all kinds of different stories that go on out there, and a lot of those stories are so very different than each other. So I don't know.
All right, I guess I got to keep waiting.
Yes, we have to keep waiting. Nothing's going to happen until it's going to happen. See, here's what the issue is important to understand, Michael. This is not about you and me. We're at the bottom.
I know.
We're at the bottom of the pile on this stuff. It's not about you and me. And so that's why I don't put a lot of energy into it.
It would seem like some kind of news announcement or something that would come out with all these countries and some kind of way that would say, hey, we're going to do something different here. And that would, everybody knows, would trigger, hey, it's going to happen. I mean, United States can't keep borrowing money. I mean, it's so much, 22 trillion or whatever it is. It can't keep going on forever unless it's all phony. I mean, something's got to happen. Yeah. Some kind of big change is going to have to happen with the
will.
structure of all of it.
But it's the people at the top levels in the countries, along with the U.S. Treasury and the others, that are making those decisions, not you and me. And there's a whole lot more involved in all that about the timing of when all that can be released.
All right. I think it's interesting what you said about Trump and Putin and the I forgot the name of the guy from China. Anyway,
Xi. President Xi.
That's it. Yeah. But I just keep following you.
Okay. Thank you.
Praying, following you.
Appreciate it.
I mean, I do appreciate it because you're one of the only ones that, that keep referring to blog sites. How many of those people came and gone? Hundreds.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
Not even.
Yeah. Appreciate your comments.
All right.
Okay. All right.
David,
Thanks.
all right.
Okay.
I'll
All right.
keep on.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Blanca, are you there? I got a note that your call had been dropped. Did you get back on? Are you there? The note here said that you had dropped off the air, but yet it's still showing that you're still on here. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
It did pop me off, and of course I panicked, but here I am again.
You're back on. All right. Okay.
Yeah, but I did get on time to hear, boy, we've had a very interesting set of callers come in, and I want to thank the listeners, and I want to thank them for the courage to bring their questions.
Yes.
And, we're all in sensitive time. All of us are trying to make sense of what's going on. It's a very different world, and it changes every day. Every day, Alan and I wake up and we say, well, let's see what timeline we're on today, because it's a very strange world. And when Michael said that he's been following you for 5 years, that's a long time. Can you imagine all the changes, just the changes that happened in this week, and then shifted to 5 years, okay? And now I've been with you, believe it or not, just a little over 3 years. It happened so fast. And I've seen so many changes, and I'm very thankful to the Michaels and the other people who've been working with you and energizing us for 5 years, because if they hadn't been doing this in year 3, when I came aboard, this whole reality we're trying to create wouldn't exist. You see, and then the people who join you tomorrow, and tomorrow will be thankful to us that we held the energy. And yes, sometimes it's disappointing, and sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes our fear-based thoughts come into mind, but we have to persevere. If we don't believe in this, if we're not hopeful for this, if we're not thinking about all the wonderful things we're going to do with these funds and the change we're going to create, who's going to do it? If we're the ones in the line to actually receive some of these funds when this happens, and we're demoralized, that doesn't sound right, really, if you think about it. So, to everyone who's been in this creation, we're getting close to the finish line, so now is not the time to lose heart.
Sure.
In fact, now is the time to strengthen our hearts. And I think that's another reason, Dave, why you're starting to shift into this consciousness issue of, are we going to shift from a survival-based consciousness to an exploratory-based creation consciousness, because this might just be the thing we need to adopt.
Yep. And thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight and all the callers. We don't have any more callers, do we?
Wait, I just saw someone, it looks like someone from 808 just raised their hand. Do you want to check and see if they have a question?
I'll go ahead and go on into them. They just came in, and let's just go right into them directly right now, okay? So the caller from area code 808, there you are, caller area code 808, you're on the air. What can we help you with tonight?
Hey, hello there. Hope everybody's doing well. I just, I wanted to thank you for all the information that you brought us for all these years. I've also been with you since the beginning, and it's quite the shift and quite the change. But one thing I wanted to just say on that note is for everybody, I know people get frustrated at times, but like what you said before, is like this isn't about us, it's about all of us, the entire planet, and we have to have patience, and there are a lot of signs out there that things are changing. You got to look for it, but you can't look in the mainstream media news, that's for sure. And there are a lot of different countries doing some stuff with their reserves right now, going back and stuff like that. A lot of them. So the signs are out there that there's big shifts coming and changing for humanity. We just need to hold each other up in the light as much as possible and spread that around. Because it does get frustrating for people sometimes, but you got to be there for each other. So that's what we need to do. And thank you for everything that you do. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. We didn't catch your name. First name's fine, but.
Des, easy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. All right. Okay. Thank you for the comments. We'll appreciate it. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. Good night. Okay, so I think that's it, Blanca. I think we've gone through all the callers tonight. We've said everything we want to say, and I
Yes,
think we're probably ready to call it a night tonight, aren't we?
I think so. And thanks again to the folks who called in, and for the listeners that joined us, and the folks on YouTube, and those that are going to watch in the weeks to come.
That's right. And folks, thank you everybody, and thank you. And I hope with the one caller that I basically had to cut him short. That's the sensitivity about how sometimes things I can say. And it's not so much what I say; it's about how the people would want to attack and what they'll take out of it. And it's a learning process for me as well. And but those are the sensitive things that I cannot talk about on the air without it creating some very serious problems. So, and I hope the caller understands that, and everybody here that's listening can understand it as well. So, it's not a simple, easy process that we're going through here, and there's a number of people that would love to stop us in this process. So, I want to thank everybody for understanding that. So, okay, anything else you'd like to share, Blanca?
I think that's good, Dave. Thanks so much for all you brought us today.
I think we're ready to go then, and we'll see you all next week. Okay? All right. Thanks, folks. Okay. Bye-bye.